I wasn't supposed to hear the phone call. That's the part that still gets me. If my shift hadn't been canceled, if the ER hadn't been overstaffed that night, I would have driven home at 6 in the morning like always, and I never would have known what my sister was planning. But the charge nurse sent me home early. I pulled into the driveway a little after midnight, headlights off out of habit because I never wanted to wake anyone. The porch light was on. The kitchen window glowed yellow behind the curtain. I figured my sister was up watching something on her laptop the way she always did when she couldn't sleep. I came in through the side door, quiet, shoes off, bag on the hook, keys on the counter. The house was warm and smelled like the lavender candle my sister liked to burn. Normal, ordinary. Nothing about that moment felt like a warning. Then I heard her voice coming from the living room. Low, steady, almost rehearsed. Not the voice she used when she talked to friends. Not the voice she used with me. This was the voice of someone confirming details. She said, "The policy pays out in 60 days. After that, we're clear." I stopped in the hallway. My hand was still on the wall. A man's voice came through the phone speaker. I couldn't make out every word, but I caught enough. Something about timing, something about making it look accidental. Then my sister laughed, short and dry, and said, "She doesn't even check her mail. She has no idea I changed the beneficiary 3 months ago." The floor didn't move. The walls didn't shake. But something inside my chest dropped like it had been cut loose from a wire. I stood there for maybe 10 seconds. That's a long time when your brain is trying to reconcile the person you love with the words coming out of her mouth. 10 seconds of hoping I'd misheard. 10 seconds of reaching for any explanation that didn't end where this one was heading. Nona came. I backed out the way I came in. Same door, same silence. I sat in my car in the driveway, with the engine off, and my hands on the steering wheel, staring at the house I grew up in. The house our mother left us. The house where my sister apparently sat planning something I still couldn't say out loud. Let me back up. My name is Megan. I'm 31. I've been an ER nurse for 7 years at a hospital outside of Charlotte. I work nights mostly, 12-hour shifts that start when most people are eating dinner and end when most people are brushing their teeth. It's not glamorous. It's not easy. But I'm good at it because I'm calm under pressure and I don't freeze when things go sideways. You can't afford to freeze when someone's coding on your table. My sister Rachel is 27. She's smart, sharper than me in a lot of ways. She studied finance in college, worked at an accounting firm for 2 years, then quit to do freelance bookkeeping. She said the corporate world was suffocating. I believed her. I always believed her. After our mom passed 2 years ago, we inherited the house together. No mortgage, just property taxes and upkeep. Mom's life insurance went to both of us equally, $100,000 each. I put mine into savings and kept working. Rachel spent hers within a year. I didn't ask on what. She was an adult. It wasn't my business. We lived together because it made sense. I was gone most nights. She worked from home. The house was big enough for 2 people who loved each other but needed space. It worked. At least I thought it did. What I didn't know was that Rachel had been in debt for over a year. Not regular debt, not credit cards or student loans. Gambling debt, online poker that started as a hobby and turned into something she couldn't stop. I found out later that she owed close to $90,000 to people who didn't send polite reminders. What I also didn't know was that, 6 months earlier, Rachel had taken out a life insurance policy on me, $500,000. She forged my signature on the application, listed herself as the sole beneficiary, and used a medical exam I'd taken for work as the required physical. The premiums came out of an account I didn't know existed, funded by cash deposits she made at an ATM 2 towns over. I didn't know any of this when I sat in my car that night. All I knew was what I heard. And what I heard was my sister talking about my death like it was a line item in a budget. I didn't sleep. I drove to a 24-hour diner on Route 49 and sat in a corner booth with coffee I didn't drink. My phone sat on the table, dark. I didn't text Rachel. I didn't text anyone. I just sat there and let the information settle the way you have to when the truth is too big to process in one pass. At 4 in the morning, I made a decision. Not an emotional one, a practical one. I wasn't going to confront her. I wasn't going to cry or scream or ask her why. I was going to find out exactly what she'd done, document every piece of it, and then decide what to do with evidence instead of feelings. That's what 7 years in the ER teaches you. When someone comes in bleeding, you don't ask them how they feel about it. You stop the bleeding first. The next morning, I went back to the house while Rachel was out. She'd left a note on the counter. Running errands. Back by noon. I took a photo of the note, including the timestamp on my phone. That became the first entry in a folder I never expected to build. I started in her room. Not tearing things apart, just looking. Carefully. Drawers, shelves, the closet, the desk she used for work. I found a second phone in a shoebox under the bed. Prepaid, no case, fully charged. I turned it on. The lock screen had no password. Inside were messages with someone named Derek. Dozens of them. Going back months. The early messages were casual. Flirting, plans to meet up. I didn't care about that. What I cared about were the messages from the last 3 weeks. Derek, you sure about this? Rachel, I don't have a choice. They're going to hurt me if I don't pay. Derek, how much again? Rachel, $87,000. The policy covers $500. We split what's left after the debt. Derek, and she won't suspect anything? Rachel, she works nights. She's exhausted all the time. She won't see it coming. I read the entire thread. My hands were steady. My breathing was steady. Inside, something had gone very still. The way it does in the ER, when you realize a patient isn't going to make it, and your job shifts from saving them to managing what comes next. I photographed every message, every single one. I put the phone back exactly where I found it, same angle, same position in the box. Then I left the room and closed the door. Downstairs, I opened the filing cabinet where we kept household documents. Behind the insurance papers for the house, I found a folder I'd never seen before. Inside was the life insurance policy. My name, my details, my supposed signature. $500,000, payable to Rachel Ann Prescott upon my death. I photographed that too, every page, front and back. I was in the kitchen when Rachel came home. She walked in carrying grocery bags and smiled at me the way she always did. Wide and easy, like nothing in her world was crooked. You're up early, she said. Couldn't sleep. You want me to make breakfast? I'm good. Thanks. She shrugged and started putting groceries away. I watched her hands move from bag to shelf, efficient, familiar. These were the same hands that signed my name on a policy designed to profit from my death. You okay? She asked, glancing over her shoulder. Just tired. She nodded and kept going. I left the kitchen and went to my room and locked the door. I sat on the bed and opened my laptop and started searching. Life insurance fraud. Forged beneficiary documents. How to report suspected insurance fraud. What constitutes conspiracy? The answers weren't comforting, but they were clear. Over the next 4 days, I built a case without Rachel knowing. I worked my shifts, came home, slept when I needed to, and spent every free hour collecting evidence. I pulled my credit report and found the policy listed under a bureau I hadn't authorized. I called the insurance company from the hospital parking lot during my break and asked for a copy of the application. When it arrived in my email, the signature didn't even look like mine. It was close, but not close enough. I requested my medical records from work and cross-referenced them with the exam date listed on the policy. They matched. Rachel had used a routine physical I'd done for my employer and submitted it as the policy's required medical evaluation. On the 3rd day, I drove to a different town and met with an attorney named Garrett Powell. He was in his 50s, calm, experienced. He didn't flinch when I laid out what I had. This is insurance fraud at minimum, he said. If the messages indicate planning to cause your death, that's conspiracy to commit murder. I nodded. I'd already known that, but hearing it from someone else made it real in a way my own thoughts hadn't. What do you want to do? He asked. I want to report it, but I want the documentation airtight first. He agreed. He helped me organize everything into a timeline. The policy application, the forged signature, the prepaid phone messages, the phone call I overheard, the financial motive. He made copies and secured originals. Don't confront her, he said as I stood to leave. Don't change your routine. Don't let her know anything has shifted. I know, I said, and I did. Because that's the same principle that keeps people alive in the ER. You don't panic. You don't broadcast your next move. You stabilize first. On the 4th day, I went to the police. Detective Hale was a woman around my age with short hair and a notebook she wrote in with a pencil, not a pen. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she asked 3 questions. Is the prepaid phone still in the house? Yes. Is the insurance folder still in the filing cabinet? Yes. Has your sister or her associate mentioned a specific method or date? I played her the voicemail I'd recorded from outside the living room the night before. Rachel on the phone with Derek, discussing medication. My medication? The Ambien I took occasionally for sleep after long shifts. She said she could double the dose, I told the detective, crush it into a drink, make it look like I took too many after a rough shift. Detective Hale closed her notebook and looked at me. We're going to need a warrant, she said, and I'm going to need you to stay somewhere else tonight. I checked into a motel off the highway. Nothing fancy. Clean sheets, a lock that worked, a window facing the parking lot. I set my folder on the nightstand and sat on the bed. My phone buzzed. Rachel, hey, where are you? Thought you were off tonight. I typed back, picked up an extra shift. Be home in the morning. Okay, I made pasta if you want some later. I stared at that message for a long time. Pasta. She made pasta. My sister, who was planning to kill me, made pasta and offered to save me a plate. That's the part people don't understand about betrayal. It doesn't come dressed in black. It comes wearing the face of someone who asks if you want dinner. The next morning, I got a call from Detective Hale. They'd executed the warrant at 6 a.m. Rachel was home. Derek was not, but they had his address. The prepaid phone was recovered. The insurance documents were seized. Rachel's laptop contained search history for Ambien overdose symptoms, lethal dosage by body weight, and how long it takes for life insurance to pay out after an accidental death. She's been arrested, Detective Hale said. She's asking for you. No, I said. Understood. I sat in the motel room and stared at the wall. Not the ceiling, the wall. There was a crack in the plaster that ran from the corner down to the baseboard, thin and precise like someone had drawn it there on purpose. My phone rang. Unknown number, I answered. Megan, it's Derek. I almost hung up. Instead, I said nothing. Look, I didn't want any of this. She came to me. She said it was just about the money. I didn't think she was serious. You discussed dosage, I said. Silence. You discussed timing. More silence. You discussed what my death would look like on paper. He hung up. I saved the call log and added it to the folder. An hour later, my Aunt Patricia called. She lived in Raleigh, my mom's older sister. She was crying. Megan, what is happening? Rachel was arrested. I know. She called me. She says you're lying. I'm not. She says you set her up. There are police records, Aunt Patricia. There's a warrant. There's a forged life insurance policy with my name on it. Quiet. Then, she said you two had a fight, and you're getting back at her. I found messages on her phone planning my death. She researched how much Ambien it takes to kill someone my size. My aunt didn't respond for a long time. When she did, her voice was smaller. She told me it was a misunderstanding. It wasn't. The call ended with my aunt saying she needed time. That was fair. I needed time too, just not for the same reasons. Over the next week, things moved the way institutional things move, slow and procedural. Derek was arrested 2 days after Rachel. His apartment had printouts of the insurance policy, a burner phone with matching messages, and a notebook with dollar amounts broken down by category. Debt payoff, split, expenses. He'd written it in pencil, like a grocery list. Rachel was charged with conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, and forgery. Derek was charged as a co-conspirator. Bail was set high. Neither of them made it. My attorney called me on a Tuesday. The insurance company is launching their own investigation, he said. The policy will be voided. You'll likely be contacted for a statement. Fine. How are you doing? I looked around the motel room that had become my temporary life. Takeout containers in the trash. My uniform hanging on the bathroom door. A folder on the desk that contained evidence my sister wanted me dead. I'm functioning, I said. That counts. The hardest part wasn't the arrest. It wasn't the evidence or the legal process or the nights alone in a room that smelled like bleach and carpet shampoo. The hardest part was the silence from Rachel. She didn't call me. Not once. Not to explain. Not to apologize. Not to deny it. She called my aunt. She called our cousin David. She called a woman our mother used to work with. She told all of them I was unstable, that I'd fabricated everything, that I was jealous of her because she was the one who stayed home and took care of Mom while I worked nights. None of that was true. But truth moves slower than a good story, and Rachel had always been a better storyteller than me. Cousin David texted me on a Thursday. I don't know what to believe. I sent him the case number and told him to call Detective Hale. I didn't explain. I didn't defend myself. Facts don't need a publicist. He texted back 2 hours later. I'm sorry. I didn't respond. Not because I was angry, but because sorry doesn't fix what it acknowledges. 3 weeks after the arrest, I went back to the house for the first time. I brought a friend from work, a paramedic named Jess, who didn't ask questions when I asked her to come with me. She just said, "What time?" and showed up. The house looked the same. That was the cruelest part. Same porch, same yellow light, same lavender smell lingering in the curtains. Rachel's shoes were still by the door. Her coffee mug sat in the sink, unwashed. A load of laundry sat in the dryer, wrinkled and forgotten. I packed what I needed. Clothes, documents, photos of my mom. I didn't touch Rachel's things. That wasn't my job anymore. Jess stood in the hallway while I moved between rooms. At one point she said, "You're handling this really well." "No," I said, "I'm handling it. That's different." I locked the house behind me and gave the key to my attorney. He would coordinate with the court about the property since it was jointly owned. There would be a process. There's always a process. At the preliminary hearing, I sat 3 rows back and watched my sister enter the courtroom in an orange jumpsuit. She looked thinner. Her hair was pulled back. She didn't look at me until the judge addressed her, and then her eyes swept the room and found mine for a half second. There was nothing in that look. No guilt, no remorse, no anger. Just calculation. She was still figuring out how to win. The prosecutor laid out the case, the forged policy, the messages, the browser history, the recorded conversation, the financial motive. Rachel's attorney argued it was circumstantial, that the messages were taken out of context, that Rachel's gambling debts were a private matter unrelated to her sister's insurance. The judge didn't buy it. The case was bound over for trial. Outside the courthouse, a reporter asked me how I felt. I said, "I'm alive. That's how I feel." It took 3 months for the trial to begin, and less than a week for it to end. The messages were read aloud. The insurance documents were projected on a screen. The mechanic who found that Rachel had also tampered with my car's brake fluid reservoir testified that the damage was consistent with deliberate interference, not wear. I hadn't even known about the car. That detail came out during the investigation. She'd covered multiple angles. Rachel took the stand. She cried. She said she never meant for anything to happen. She said Derek pressured her. She said the gambling had taken over her life and she wasn't thinking clearly. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, insurance fraud, forgery, criminal tampering with a motor vehicle. Rachel was sentenced to 22 years. Derek got 15. After the sentencing, I drove back to Charlotte alone. The highway stretched out flat and gray. I didn't turn the radio on. I didn't call anyone. I let the road noise fill the car and the miles stack up behind me. I moved into an apartment near the hospital. Nothing big, 1 bedroom, a kitchen that faced east so I got morning light after night shifts. I unpacked my things slowly over a week, not because I was tired, but because I wanted to be deliberate about what went where. This was my space now. Only mine. Aunt Patricia called a month later. She'd been to see Rachel. She didn't tell me what they talked about, and I didn't ask. She just said, "I'm sorry I doubted you." "I know," I said. "Are you okay?" I looked out the kitchen window at the parking lot below. A woman was loading groceries into her car. A kid was riding a bike in circles. The sun was going down in that slow way it does in the fall, turning everything golden before it turns dark. "I'm getting there," I said. And for the first time, I meant it. I still work nights. I still don't freeze when things go sideways. The difference now is that I know what betrayal looks like up close, and it doesn't look like a villain in a movie. It looks like your sister offering you pasta while she plans your funeral. I don't hate Rachel. Hate takes energy I'd rather spend on patients who actually want to live. What I feel is something quieter than hate and heavier than sadness. It doesn't have a name. Maybe it doesn't need one. The house sold 6 months later. I split the proceeds with Rachel's court-appointed trustee. My share went into a savings account I check once a month. The rest went toward her legal fees. I didn't fight it. Money from that house was never going to feel clean. Some nights, after a long shift, I sit in my car in the hospital parking lot and just breathe. Not because I'm scared, not because I'm processing, Because I'm reminding myself that being alive isn't something I should take for granted. Not anymore. I never got the last word with Rachel. I never needed one. The evidence spoke. The jury listened. And I walked out of that courtroom the same way I walked into that house the night I heard the phone call. Quietly, carefully, and paying attention to every single detail. If you're listening to this and something in your life feels off, something a family member said, something that doesn't add up, a feeling you can't explain, don't ignore it. Don't talk yourself out of it. Don't wait for it to make sense on its own. Trust your gut. Document everything. And don't let anyone make you feel crazy for wanting to stay alive. That's not paranoia. That's survival. If you enjoyed this story, tap the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and drop a comment telling me, would you have handled it differently? I read every single one. See you in the next one.